Speedy Six, let's do activity 2, where you're going to write a word, and I'm going to use a word that a parent just wrote to me about. The word was perimeter. Okay, so in the Speedy Six, very quickly, say it, what does it mean, ask the children what it means, whatever. That part's 60 seconds. Okay, then the children are going to write that word on their board and they're going to think about how it's code mapped. Now, some children will want to go straight on to the code mapping as they go along. Children who are struggling with phonemic awareness, spelling, reading, whatever, what I suggest is that you get them to do duck hands, lines, numbers, monsters first. So perimeter, so you can check where the difficulty is, because they could map that correctly but not have the underlying knowledge. So when they actually come to read and spell, this the activity is to help them develop the skills needed for reading and spelling. And just by code mapping that, the parent actually showed me the code mapping, and I said, well, that doesn't tell me anything. I need to know what they're hearing. What sounds are they hearing, etc. Okay, so duck hands, perimeter. Now, a lot of children that have struggled are so used to having to desperately look at the word to try and memorize it or whatever, that they can be very easily blinded by the letters. So they look at this and they've got quite a limited knowledge of the code. So they look and they think that ER is going to be together. That ER is going to be together. Are they both going to be together? There's two letters there to get the same letters there, but are they both representing a grapheme? And that's what we're exploring. So we don't want to get blinded by the letters, and teachers do it as well. But it's fine for a teacher because they can already read and spell, not for the child who is struggling. So we've got to really pick it apart. Okay, so you're watching their duck hands, but then if you've got a class of 25, you might not be able to see their duck hands. So that's why speech and lines, you can see, and they play it check their hearing, perimeter, so you can see here if they've got the right number of phonemes before they've even thought about the speech sound monsters, putting them on the line so that you know the speech sounds they're hearing. You're actually seeing if they're hearing the correct number of speech sounds, regardless of whether they are the correct speech sounds. This is the point where you're really going to pick up on, this is your diagnostic tool. So you've got to watch the children who are struggling, because what they'll do is they'll look at the person next to them and they'll copy them, and you still don't know. All of this monster routine and Speedy Six and whatever is so that you can pick apart where the issues are. Okay, so let's say you've watched them and they did that you're still not finished. If you were tutoring, you would then say, okay, now can you play it? So it's really important they learn the monsters really quickly. These are just phonetic symbols for kids. See what they chose. They might have chosen an at the end. They might say perimeter. They don't actually say that, but they might think it's an R. And if just by playing the monsters, you will see if they've gone, if they've actually done the correct phonemes for spelling. Now, if they've got a different accent or dialect or whatever else, again, they might choose different monsters. But you need to know which sounds they are hearing. And you can't do that without the monsters, because hearing is something that's going on in their brain. We're making it visible by using the monsters. We could have chosen the phonetic symbols. They're all just phonetic symbols for kids. So you could have chosen phonetic symbols, which they will do in the countries that do far better for literacy than we do in England, Australia and America, because they use the phonetic symbols. They're trying to think about that written, universally recognized written spelling code, because a lot of them are learning English as well. Okay, so we would then say to the children, okay, so can you choose the monsters? Now it's easy to cover it up so that they can't actually see the letters and be blinded. So say, okay, so perimeter. Hopefully they've chosen the schwa instead of perimeter. It's not perimeter, is it? It's not it's not perimeter, it's perimeter. It's like that grunty sound, isn't it? That's so difficult to say. Perim and I need a spare, so I just go to my spare jar, just put one in the middle of the table with some spares. Perimit. Now some of them, whilst they're segmenting, as I say, they'll go because they want to choose the blue cow, because they're over pronouncing because of the segmentation. But say, no, how do you say it? Perimeter. Okay, so the perimeter, it's a schwa at the end as well, isn't it? Okay, so once you've got those monsters, you've checked their phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is the biggest predictor of reading and spelling failure and success there is. So this part matters far more than if you just ask the child to duck hand. You can't see all the children. If you just ask the child to put the lines and numbers underneath, you don't know the process. And they could have copied somebody, or they could have just happened to have got it right because for, you know, because even basic phonics, they're likely to go, you know, that is one, etc., etc. Okay, so now we're saying, okay, so you've got those phonemes right. Now let's just map the phonemes to the graphemes. So that's the picture for this sound here, for the p. That's the picture. I just call them sound pictures. That's the picture for the the e. That's the picture for the This is when we use letter names, because the letter names are dictating what they are. You know, they don't necessarily represent, you know, you're not saying here's an because it's not in this word, it's the schwa. So it's much easier to say that's the p, that's a schwa, that's a Then the I is the sound pick, the picture of the sound for the I, peri, and they're not working it out, it's here. Working it out on their own. Peri, where are we up to? Perim, So here, like I say, there's absolutely no point saying there, because it's not an So they need to know when to use letter names. Here it's an E. That E is a picture for the sound I. Number 6, then the T is the picture for the sound T. And the schwa at the end, that 8th phoneme, is the ER. So that is monster mapped and code mapped, and the purpose for doing that is so that you know where the gaps are, so that you know how best to teach them. So if we just did that from the beginning and they'd just done that, you wouldn't know all of this underlying stuff. And it's fine if a child who's not struggling, because all the underlying stuff is working. If the underlying stuff isn't, you need to know what part is it. So on the board, and you would have then, of course, so get them to play it again. Let's just check it. Let's just play it again. And a lot of the children are much faster than me. But also then go to phonetics.com, put it in, show the transcription. Now sometimes I override this because this is this is linguistics and phonetics. When you think about the phonics, that's your linguistics, but we don't always talk on paper in the same way that we speak, if you know what I mean. So let's have a look at that. So perimeter. Okay, so that's exactly how we've done it. And if they had their monster map here, which has got those phonetic symbols, then they would see. Did we do that? Yes. 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 It. At the end. Okay, so do it like that. Now, if you're in a classroom, you would then just put the top back on the pen because I always forget. Okay, and then they could check with their own spelling cloud map, because what we do here is we say, okay, what was new that you didn't know? They might have added this to the schwa cloud. If you saw Bernice's, she's got a class schwa cloud, and so throughout the term or the year, they're putting all the schwas and the example words in there as they go. But the child might have said perimeter. I didn't know the E could represent the I sound. So then you would go to the I cloud. Okay, let's have a look. Can it? Did you know? Can you see it there? And what was the example word? Enough. There you go. And look at all of those others we're going to be exploring. So it's what did you learn personally that was new to you? Which are the representation for the schwa? If you're lucky enough to have a speech sound monster bank, then you've got all of the sound. So like the sound, monster sound, you've got all of the choices on the back, but you've also got all of the spelling choices on your cards. So we'd have the word on the board. Now this is really important, these monsters, because the children look at the monsters and think of the phonetic symbols, or if they don't think of the phonetic symbols because they haven't learned them yet, which is they just learn, we're not teaching them explicitly, they just pick them up. But when they look at the monster, they know the sound, they know the phoneme, just the same as, you know, children in Hong Kong, China, all countries that do far better than we do, is because the children know phonetic symbols mean the sounds. The sounds don't represent letters until they're in a word. Letters can represent multiple different sounds. So what's great for the brain here is that here we've got, look, there's monster P, and in this word it's a P. There's the schwa, in this word it's an E. There's the monster, in this word it's a it's an R. There's the I monster, in this word it's an I. It's an I, sorry, in this word it's the I, again that's why we use letter names here, and here the is an M, here the I sound is an E, and that's why it's so important. If you can have these you know, the monster sound cards, it's so important because the brain doesn't get confused. The brain goes, oh, okay, sound, oh, but that sound is represented by a different letter. And it's really hard for struggling children to sort of separate that out or to understand that when you haven't put them there. So, you know, that's why children use phonetic symbols. Phonetic symbols would be for I there, you'd see the same phonetic symbol and a different letter. If you don't do this with phonetic symbols or monsters, the monsters are just so much more child friendly. If you don't, you're robbing the children of the chance to actually understand mapping as quickly and easily as possible, and to become readers and spellers as quickly and easily as possible, because English is not a one-to-one. That's why, you know, children in Finland learn to speak and Italian or whatever else, because there's far less combinations. If you think of the sound, it's often represented by the same, you know, symbol. So here, and look, we've got here the schwa sound, the perimeter, the sound. Here is an E, here is an ER. There's so much to be learnt when it is visible. That's why the speech sound picture approach and monster mapping, what have you, it's visual phonics, because you're making the sounds which aren't visible, we're making them visible, and it's linguistic because we're thinking about the sounds, the smallest units, those phonetic symbols.